Sometimes even good people can make a mistake. And when it happens, it's one of the most intense and emotional experiences of your life. It could be a DUI, or maybe you were in the wrong place with the wrong people at the wrong time. Or perhaps you just did something stupid at the spur of the moment without even thinking, and now you're in trouble with the law. Well, you need experienced legal help right away so you don't become a victim of the criminal justice system. Even good people can make a mistake, and if you, a friend, or loved one has been accused of a crime, don't make another mistake by hiring the wrong attorney for the kind of help you need. You need to visit toddjohnslaw.com. That's toddjohnslaw.com, and then call Attorney Todd Johns today. Attorney Todd Johns has decades of experience helping good people like you who have made mistakes or bad decisions and will stand by you every step of the way. toddjohnslaw.com.
Right, hello and welcome to That's Enough Out of You. I am your host, Bill Rader, and joining me as he does each and every week, my partner in crime in this podcast business, Sean Kane. Sean, how you doing?
Billy Raids, how you doing, my man?
Oh, no complaints. No complaints today. I know Yankee fans are complaining, even though we won the game yesterday, but they're always
Yeah, I know. What are you gonna do?
But yeah, as we record, of course, by the time this airs, Yankees could be eliminated. So who knows? Maybe it'll be able to play at that point.
It's a good year, and then they're gone.
That's right, exactly. That third voice you hear is our special guest. First time on the program with us is David Josephs. David is a JFK researcher who has been doing this for probably, 25 years?
25 years now, yeah. It's been
wow.
Wonderful time, man. It's great stuff. Great puzzle. Yeah. It's a great puzzle.
Yeah. And you're really considered the expert. I know you and Sean kind of got connected about the whole Mexico City, the Oswald and Mexico City topic. So that we're looking forward to talking to you about that.
I sure appreciate you guys getting me onto your show. Love to hear from Sean again. Very, very, very pleased to be out here talking to you guys.
So what happened is when I did the episode on Mexico City, people were telling me that I should get in touch with you, Dave, and bring you on, and you had commented on the YouTube. So then I reached out to you, and then we hooked up on a phone call. We had a great phone call. That was a great conversation.
Yeah, we did. That was great. It was like a couple hours.
At some point, I want to recreate that if we could, maybe at another time, because tonight I want to stick to, because we covered on that phone call, we covered everything.
You could just talk forever on this stuff.
Yeah, we were like talking big picture JFK, talking everything. So that's going to be a fascinating discussion, and also about the Notebook, because we want to discuss the Notebook.
Yeah, down the road.
That's down the road, right?
Yes.
Because Billy, you're not familiar with the Notebook, but
no,
this smoking gun. That could be a smoking gun in this.
Yeah, this new book. Yeah, there's a book out. Hank Albarelli, and it's worth getting into down the road.
It's on our bookshop, so people could get it there. But we're going to talk.
Wonderful.
We're going to talk mostly about Mexico City. That's what we want to get into tonight.
And Sean, if I could just jump in real quick, I know Mexico City is a very confusing topic for people, and so and it is for me too. So I may be interrupting, to kind of ask the questions that I want to ask, and that I'm sure probably a lot of people would be asking listening to this. So if that's okay, I hope I'm not annoying anybody, but that's what I kind of.
Oh, that'll be perfect, Billy.
All right. Yeah, good. Sure. No, the more the merrier. More merrier. Mexico has always been, again, it means a lot of different things to a lot of people. Is the point? Is there are experts that talk about those 5 days and what was really going on. And kind of my approach, which came a little later, which was, I thought, a whole different way of looking at it.
And I think, Dave, the thing I really want to get into is basically just prove that, like you have done with your great research, that Oswald was not there.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing really holding this story that he is there is the CIA transcripts, and we know we could take that worth,
Well, and yeah, the point that kind of hit me about Mexico was that it was, even to the point of Lopez down the road, confirmed that the Warren Commission report had actually correctly established that he had gone. And that was one of those, really?
Yeah.
I mean, because Lopez was led around by the nose down there when he was doing his investigations by the CIA.
Right,
So,
but his partner Hardaway, though, basically said, I have no idea if he was there.
exactly.
Right? What he said, he said,
yeah, completely. So,
Yeah.
but Lopez was willing enough to put in his report that they conceded it. And when you start, that kind of got me started, obviously. And then from there, you really kind of have to start at the beginning. I mean, over at KennedyandKings.com, there's some stuff. There's a big write-up. I have about 6 chapters on this stuff. So if you really like to get deep into it, by all means, give it a try. But most people know about the tourist visa that happened in September in New Orleans. And why would the CIA, why would Mr. William Godet be hidden for so long if it was not integral to what they were doing?
right.
I want to talk a little bit before we start really getting too deep into the Mexico. I kind of just want to say that we need to see that Mexico is yet part of a bunch of onion layers of confusion that's
Yes.
going on, and
Right.
has really very little to do with the assassination itself, other
Okay.
than to incriminate Oswald.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, these things happen. The evidence that exists and starts to come to being doesn't happen until November 22nd. It doesn't begin to even, so to go back now, he has this visa, tourist visa, supposedly. He moving forward, I'd like to ask, you know, what's on your mind for confusion about Mexico, when Bill was talking about what he was mostly confused about. Establishing he wasn't there comes down to the FBI fabricating a lot of evidence in about 1,500 documents to confuse you as to what really happened. So why would the CIA, why would they try to put him down there? Couple of months behind.
And why is it important? I mean, you know, I think
why is it important? Exactly.
Right.
Why is it so important that, well, let's look at it then. My question then is, if he wasn't down there, which is I kind of felt he really wasn't there, where really was he? And you look at the Sylvia Odio story.
Right.
In the Sylvia Odio story, the hostie and another FBI agent went to go see her in December and never went back. They never went back. They talked to her for about a very, very short period of time in July, August of 1964, and then threw in a couple of lines about how Lauren Hall and a group of other people actually saw. And it wasn't Oswald. So right. What was Oswald really doing with 2 Cubans traveling through onto Dallas, Texas at that time? He was working for the FBI. He's doing things at a very, very low level in which a lot of assets for the FBI and CIA were doing. He was gathering names, looking to be pro-Castro, anti-Castro. He was involved all summer long with the intelligence. So in the middle of him riding to Dallas in a car with 2 Cubans, the CIA decides to put his name into a mix in Mexico City. Because right. as we say, the beginning of that evidence happens in October, right? October 8th, October 9th, October 10th. All
Sure.
of a sudden we start getting memos from Mexico that talk about this guy, Oswald. Well, David Atlee Phillips arrived in Mexico as Cuban desk chief on October the 7th. Surprise, surprise.
Right.
Okay. And all of a sudden on the 8th, we're getting memos through Ann Goodpasture and others at the Russian desk to start establishing that Oswald is there doing something, or was there doing something. He was picked up on a tape. So my thought was, all right, well, aren't there contemporaneous reports that are done about what happens in all of these tapping programs that we do in Mexico?
Sure.
And of course there are. Well, I got lucky. I mean, I had some thoughts about these ahead of time, but luckily in 2017 and 2018, we had a new document dump, and they released a lot of documents, and we come to find that, yeah, there are summary reports about what happened in the LI programs. And in the September programs, the September summaries, they don't mention anybody calling. They don't mention any phone calls from an American in Mexico on September 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, nothing in September. And then they do mention something about a male voice in October, finally, which that report doesn't come until months later. So at the time, the Russians weren't even talking about some American that was trying to get in. They were tapping the Russians, the Russian homes. They knew everything that was going on down there. And that's why even Ambassador Mann was known to have said, other than the hotel and his time at the embassy, at the consulate, we have no proof he was here. So it gets very, very deep. I mean, I have, again, 60 slides or so in these, and almost each one of them can deeply prove that Hoover knew. I believe Hoover knew in October when he got the report, when they got that fake memo from the CIA saying that Lee Harvey Oswald, this guy was on a tape, and he knew, I think, that something else was going on.
So, Dave, you think, so you're talking about October before the assassination, you're talking October 63. You're
Correct.
thinking Hoover already suspected that there was probably something in the
well, on October the 10th, on October the 10th, the CIA sent that famous cable to the FBI, to the State Department, and said that this guy who was, let me take a quick look about, the one that went to the State Department, FBI, and the Navy was that he was 35 years old, an athletic build, about 6 feet tall, and had receding hair. So that wasn't Oswald at all, okay? But no. Lee Oswald was aware to the people in the FBI. They knew who he was.
Sure.
The Mexico station got the born October 10, October in 1939, but was 5'10" and 165, which was the very interesting little presentation that you'll hear throughout the entire JFK thing, 5'10", 165.
Yeah, that's what they put out, right?
Yeah, Robert Webster was 5'10" and 165.
Yeah, another defector.
Yeah. So now he gets this note in October, on the 10th of October. And what does he do? I wanted to find out what he did. And we find that he asked this agent, Special Agent Peck, to find out and ask all of the resources that he had down in Mexico City, whether or not Oswald was there. Was there any note at all about any sighting of Oswald? And in the index of FBI reports, these reports don't have titles. They are basically blank. They don't tell you what they are. There's 5 of them. And they don't tell you what they are in the summaries. But if you go to the reports themselves, each one is a description of how they asked anywhere from a half a dozen to 20 assets in Mexico if they could find Oswald. And not one of them reported to the FBI that he was there. One of the reports was even from the Department of the Interior, where the FBI had an extremely high level asset, who I found, and was shocked beyond all shock when I did my research that no other book up to that point had this man mentioned at all. And he was at the department. He was the Gobernacion, and the man's name was Ochoa, Rafael Ochoa.
Fascinating character.
Yeah, and he basically was the liaison for all of the FBI's Mexican evidence, which piece by piece, if you look at and take and trace back through, can show it's bogus, like most of the other FBI evidence. Right. Yeah.
Can I jump in real quick? So I guess what I really want to make clear is, and I want to take about 10,000 steps back and about 30,000 feet up.
Oh, gotcha, sir.
and explain to me, but certainly our listeners also, what is the relevance to the assassination? Why was it so important that you know, that the FBI, CIA wanted to you know, to people to think that he was in Mexico City as it relates to the assassination?
Well, the CIA. I wish there was an easy answer, Bill. The CIA wanted to make it look like he was getting money. The story that was planted was a guy named Alvarado, and Alvarado reported back to the CIA to the station in Mexico City that Oswald went there, met a dark-skinned, red-haired man, got $6,500 to go kill Kennedy. That's the story. Okay. That story went back from the Mexico City up to CIA headquarters, and in my opinion, I saw that as yet another counterintelligence disinformation thing by David Atlee Phillips. And this guy was from Nicaragua. He was a CIA asset, and he was telling a story about Oswald being there getting money from Castro. Okay, because everybody wanted to blame the CIA. The initial story was to blame Castro by the CIA.
Right.
There's a man named Peter Dale Scott. Peter Dale Scott wrote.
We talked about him.
Okay. Peter Dale Scott wrote about phase 1 and phase 2 in this whole JFK thing. Phase 1 was to make it so frightening for the people involved, like Johnson, that World War could start, that Castro was the guy behind it, that communism and Russia was behind Castro, that all of this could be that we better go from phase 1 to phase 2, the lone nut killer. He wasn't involved with anybody. So all of a sudden, Alvarado, who told the CIA and was now aware of at the presidential and Hoover level that he's telling the story about Oswald going down and getting money to come kill Kennedy, that has to go away. Anything related to Castro, which was the initial plan to shut everyone up.
Right. Because Johnson's afraid of World War III.
Johnson, Hoover. Right. So how do you stop Hoover? Why would Hoover now, knowing as early as mid-November that Oswald wasn't there, that CIA wasn't doing anything, and if you look at the presentation again, there's an infamous letter from January in which Hoover writes in his own hand about how the CIA fed him the false story regarding Oswald's trip to Mexico City. This is in January during the whole investigation. So he knows this. He knows this all along, and he creates a cover story for Oswald going and coming from Mexico City so that they won't investigate what he was really doing, which was, again, seeing Odio, traveling around with Cubans, getting people's names for the Fair Play Committee, working for Bannister.
Bannister, right?
Yeah, he was the whole New Orleans, the whole time in New Orleans. You put it into context, Mexico City comes right after 2.5 months in New Orleans, where he's doing all of these things, both pro-Castro, anti-Castro. He gets into fight he gets arrested. All of these record things that now maybe give him bona fides to be a better penetration agent. So on one side of the coin, he looks like, wow, he's really the guy they say he is. On the other side of the coin, if they need him to take the fall for the killing of Kennedy, he sure looks guilty, doesn't he?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, so Mexico basically is this huge red herring related to the assassination. Even the Warren Commission itself says it had nothing to do with the assassination, but everybody makes a big deal out of Mexico because they think he got paid by the red-headed Negro man.
Right.
And then there's the rave party that happens down there that has been falsely supported by a famous name, you know, the name June Cobb in Mexico. Yeah. Okay. And Thomas Davis, Eli Davis, rather. Thomas Eli Davis.
Ties to Ruby and
yes. So
connected to the agency.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot going on. It all has to do with implicating Oswald and shutting up any serious investigation.
And Dave, this kind of ties into the phone call that we did have when we were talking about the big picture of who's behind that. And you were saying that it ties to this group of people that were so obsessed with the communists.
Yeah,
they wanted to get rid of Kennedy because of his.
Well, that's
his allegiance to the communists, to the Russian, and then blame them.
It's a very interesting theory. Okay, it's a way of looking at it as to who would be upset enough, okay, to take out a president. Because while you might believe the mafia would be mad enough and capable enough, they weren't in Bethesda. Okay, they weren't in that opera. They weren't.
When I brought that up to you, Dave, you said a great thing. You said about when I was complaining about the mob did it people. You said when somebody can explain to me how the mob got in the autopsy room, then I'll entertain that thing. And you're right. It's ridiculous to think the mafia could do this.
Right, because if they did it, I mean, how easy would it have been to pin it on the mafia?
Sure, I mean, and they're not going to cover it up for 60 years.
So you have to take it the next step is that the mafia was working with the CIA and the FBI to do a lot of things. Sure, so you can't uncover everything that's going on and how everybody is cooperating. It looks terrible. I mean, it looks, you know, they wanted to kill Castro, right? So the mob was helping the FBI and the CIA. The mob helped in World War II. I mean, it's a historical thing that context is terribly important. Because you talk about Mexico in the context of things, and it's like talking about 10 minutes of a movie that's 2 hours long. I mean, it's nice, but it really is a kind of a detour that throws, like Vincent Salandria said, it's minutia that just gets you kind of lost, that has very little to do with thinking, I mean, how does Mexico change where the rifle is and how the autopsy goes and how the Zapruder film is handled and changed. I mean, there's all these things that are involved. And one of the bigger questions I ask about Mexico and its association with the assassination is Chicago, and a man named Edwin Black, who wrote a wonderful thing called the Chicago Plot, in which Arthur Valley was the Lee Oswald. Yeah. Right? Now, what if he's killed in Chicago? What about all this stuff?
Well, Dave, you think the prior plots were dry runs, though, right? The Tampa plot, the Chicago plot. Are you kind of leaning that way that they were dry runs?
That's the theory based on the newer information. Is that it's possible that that was a dry run, but they really went out of their way in documentation, the FBI, to say that Arthur Valley had nothing to do with Lee Harvey Oswald. Like, why even put him in the same report?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, what does that have to do at all? So, and then we do know that all of the records of the Secret Service were destroyed all during that period. So the whole 2-month period. Again, Mexico, while it is very hard to understand, a la Bill Simpich and the State Secret, and wonderful writings about John Newman and how things, what really might have been going on, the before and the after are really not that hard to see. They didn't make a big deal of hiding how badly they were trying to put him there. I'd have to suggest. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Let's go into just proving that he wasn't there, and let's start with the Silvio Odio story. So one of the interesting things, Dave, in your presentation that you had, when was that? 2018.
Yeah, 2000 in San Francisco.
Right. To prove the Silvio Odio story is the Oswald that we know was at Silvio Odio's house, and it was Janet Leigh that could kind of prove that the date, what was it, September 26th?
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Janet Leigh, could you tell the Janet Leigh story? And that kind of proves, because this is where Oswald really is, and he's not in Mexico City, because if he's at Silvio Odio's house on what, is it the 26th of September?
26th, yes. I'm looking at the slides 32. Odio actually talks to her priest, Father McCann,
Right.
She said she was on her way to a charity event, which was to be attended by Janet Leigh. Okay. Right. So what we looked into was on February 27th, there was an article in the Dallas Times Herald that talked about the previous night's attendance by Janet Leigh at this particular play, at this particular event, charity event. So rather than it being a confusing thing, the 26 makes all the sense in the world, as it both it conforms with what Janet Leigh was saying when she was there, and it also conforms with him getting there going through Austin, which was a whole nother setting of him sitting in a cafe and getting some coffee and actually seeing someone behind the counter, and working his way through Austin, just casually seeing. I mean, you know, people don't get a whole lot of excitement in these little teeny tiny towns in the middle of nowhere. And when he goes and sits and makes a big show of what he's doing, it's not hard for people to remember why, you know, this guy Oswald. Sure. It is now granted, many add to their experience because they want to be involved in the story. So it gets difficult, no doubt. But it's very, very obvious. There's also the sighting at the shooting range in Dallas on that Saturday.
Yeah.
So we have multiple sightings of him in different locations in the United States where he's supposed to be, where people have said they have seen him, and not a shred of real evidence other than CIA transcripts that, again, are, you know, the interpreter's name was Tarasov, Boris Tarasov, except Boris only did the Spanish, or the Russian rather, I'm sorry. He did the Russian. His wife did the Spanish translations. Okay. And his interviews and his depositions had been kind of buried for a while as well, because he doesn't remember anywhere near the number of conversations that the CIA turned over transcripts for. So they don't talk much to Boris, and his son's involved in the CIA as well. So I mean, it's a great story about his also arriving in Dallas the following on the 3rd and calling and working his way back to the Paynes and his wife.
Right.
And then his wife lying to the Secret Service and the FBI about, you know, her initial interviews were that he never said a word about Mexico, going, coming, ever. That he was never going to go, never was going to come, and he just never said anything about it. Yet down the road, when she started to testify, she started to make up how and realize, oh, there were so many questions and I don't know what was going on. And yeah, he definitely told me he went to Mexico and definitely did this. And
yeah.
So the manufacturing of evidence, I mean, that's one thing for people hopefully to get from this, is the Mexico City evidence is such a wonderful example of how the FBI created and backstoried the evidence to incriminate him on something that he obviously didn't do.
Right.
I mean, just the bus ticket story that happens with Liebler back in September, 2 weeks before they're going to publish the Warren Commission report. Liebler actually goes to see and talks to Odio about this train ticket, about a ticket that they do a little research on, and we find never existed and was never used. So again, back to understanding that the CIA and FBI have access to forms and tickets and anything they want, right, to create a story that makes sense.
Sure. Right.
I mean, what?
Yeah. I guess another, I don't know, dumb question from me.
No dumb question. Yeah. No.
If you know, obviously if he's not in Mexico City during that time,
mm-hmm.
Where is he? And is there evidence?
Yeah.
Oh, he's still the Odios.
Yeah. Well, he's on a trip. He's actually on a trip to the Odios. He's driving with two men, and he's actually seen in a couple of places in South Texas. On his way up, there's another Oswald that is seen driving around in a variety of places, but yes, there is evidence that shows how he gets from New Orleans up through Austin and then finally up to Dallas early enough to be there at Odio's, which is Thursday night. So he leaves Tuesday. It only takes a few days to get there. And after Odio, which is her sister also confirmed it. I mean, it was not just it was, yeah, I mean, it was him. I mean, really nothing else that we can say other than him. And now he shows up at the YMCA in Dallas, which is down the street from the FBI on HARVEY Street, on October the 3rd. He tries to call and they hang up on him. I mean, Marina doesn't want to talk to him, finding out that he's been in Dallas most of the week is what he tells her. So, you know, he has to take a hitchhiker bus ride home. It's just something that he was sent on with the FBI, I believe, to finish the summer before he moved in with Marina. Again, to create both bona fides so that people would believe he is who he is. I mean, why would that guy tell Odio that he was crazy and wanted to shoot the president? Why would they start saying what they said to Odio, which she recounts in her testimony?
Right. And
purely and only implicates this crazy guy in shooting the president. Now, if it wasn't, I mean, you can't have it both ways. He's, you know, so he's being implicated in Texas at the same time he's being implicated in Mexico. He can't be in both places. And we know there was, you know, Alvarado's story was a CIA plan. I mean, we know this now. There are a number of other Valencia. There's a number of other people in the Alvarado type level in which stories revolve around how Oswald was in and out and around. It just never pans out. Finally, when the 2017 release came out, there was a double agent down there called Little Nine, and Little Nine was very, very secret. It was a very kept, you know, it wasn't until 2017 that we even really knew who he was and what he did. He was a very close friend with Askew, and in his reports and he specifically asked whether Oswald was there and seen there by his superiors, and he says no repeatedly. His cohort Little 7 also says the same thing. And these are CIA reports that had finally come out. That you know, if you're going to have a double agent that's on your side, why wouldn't you have them substantiate Oswald being there? I mean, so you have no real proof at all. You know, and Kostakov, we talked about him.
Let's get into Kostakov, Dave, because so when you heard my summation on Mexico City, you don't tend to agree that Kostakov is that important to the picture. But the thing is, Hoover didn't believe that Kostakov was Department 13, the KGB's assassination, right?
Correct.
Is that this information from James Angleton?
Originally, probably yes. I mean, again, if people are thinking that Kostakov is involved in murder, and somehow, again, the only person in the group that really supports this stuff was Ambassador Mann and Wynn Scott. They're the only ones that really said anything about Kostakov being important at all, and that Oswald was trying to get in touch with him and was somehow, again, it just makes Oswald look worse. They looked into the blonde man, the interpreter, the photograph. Yeah.
Before we get into that, let's take a quick break because we got to get our sponsors in there, and
no worries.
Take a quick break.
Sounds
good.
Be
right back.
Okay.
DK's Corner has moved. Come see us in our brand new location at 201 Cherry Street in Jessup, Pennsylvania, right across from the Jessup Plaza. Enjoy a brand new menu with hot and cold sandwiches, soups, salads, pizza, delicious breakfast, including breakfast bowls and sandwiches, specialty coffees, and DK's famous Razzle Dazzle flavor shaken espressos, and still the best cheesesteaks around. Follow DK's Corner on Facebook and Instagram, or call them at 570-209-0278 to find out about their daily specials and catering. And DK's Corner now has beautiful outdoor seating for the summer. Don't feel like leaving the house? Call DK's Corner for delivery. And we thank DK's Corner for sponsoring That's Enough Out of You. DK's Corner, now in Jessup, Pennsylvania. That's Enough Out of You is also sponsored by Casa Quattro Winery, featuring over 20 flavors of wine, from dry red, dry white, and fruit for your sampling pleasure. Casa Quattro Winery offers entertainment, parties, and private events, now serving a full menu with a little something for everyone, including appetizers, salads, dinners, pizza, and desserts. Casa Quattro has some of the best live entertainment in the area, with comedy and karaoke nights and live bands. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram for all of our upcoming events. And if you mention the code OUTA, that's OUTTA, you get 15% off of your order. Located on Main Street in Peckville, Pennsylvania, call 570-382-3855 for more information. And we thank Casa Quattro Winery for their support.
Here we are. Welcome back to That's Enough Out of You. We're going to continue here with David Josephs. David, you are located right now in Atlantic City.
I am.
All right. Well,
place beautiful day too. God.
Yeah, I've been a number of times in Atlantic City. All right, Sean, back to you.
Dave, one of the things you brought up about Coast to Cove that is fascinating to me is you mentioned how similar Coast to Cove looks to Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, and Bill, maybe you could get a picture up and we could put a picture of Coast to Cove and Oswald and just see, how similar they really do look.
Oh, it blew me away. Actually,
fascinated.
I have a side by side on top of the one that's just his normal, what looked like his CIA picture, right. I guess. And it blew me away. And then they actually had a photo of him later in life, supposedly, and it didn't look anything like him, in my opinion. But yeah, I was very surprised. But we have to continually remember about Mexico and how it fits. That it was a tool, Mexico. People want it to be part of how JFK was killed, and I think it more had to do with how the spies were spying on each other, because Mexico was such a huge spy center at the time. I mean, absolutely. Everybody had spies there, and everybody was watching everybody else, and we were one of the best at it.
So Dave, the picture though of the guy that originally they said was Oswald, that obviously isn't Oswald. Did you know? Do you ever identify who that person is?
No, I did read from, if there was a guy named Patrick Hemming, if you know his name.
Sure, we talk about him with Greg Burnham on, who knew.
Yeah, Patrick Greg, exactly.
Well.
So Greg, Patrick claims to have known who it might be, and then there's a famous memo in which Win Scott tells J.C. King, that guy that we know. They mentioned that they know who it is, but they don't mention or say who it is. There's also the fact that the pictures that are sent that are representing certain days are not taken on those days. They're taken on different days. So what made that mystery man so interesting, or actually even why he even came to prominence, was that FBI guy Odom took the photo, cropped it up, and actually showed Marguerite Oswald the photo in hopes that they were to identify a guy named Alec Heidel. Okay.
Right.
Marguerite thought the picture was of Ruby, and everything kind of freaked out. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So all of a sudden Odom gets kind of called up, and now they have to figure out what to do with this photograph and these other photos. I have about 8 of them or so. There's a whole bunch of them.
So what about, Dave, what about the fact that there's the transcripts and the tapes of somebody at the consulate trying to get a visa using the name Oswald? And then later on, Hoover would say that the voices don't match and everything. So if that wasn't Oswald, which we know it wasn't because he's at Sylvia Odio's, what was the purpose of that? Why were they setting Oswald up to get a visa? What was the whole purpose of that then? To have have an imposter there?
Well, and that's the kind of question I've been asking myself about whether was there an imposter there for real, or is this just a whole story? I mean,
so you're saying that the transcripts and everything
the transcripts, yeah, I believe the transcripts themselves were brought.
Okay.
Yeah, they were just kind of circled in and included into the stuff that was going through the Tarasovs and going through the transcription process, and may have even been brought by Phillips, may have been even brought, you know, who knows who brought them. But we know that it's not his voice. We know that the time that they were taken is also suspect. We also know that the CIA likes to drop the first one out, the first complete batch of calls from the morning of the 27th, because they don't talk about, they're in Spanish, first of all, and Oswald didn't speak Spanish. And they had to do with going to Odessa and getting a visa. And so they decided that those calls had nothing to do with it. So the only calls that we know about are on the 28th and on October the 1st. There's no other way, I think, to easily convince the FBI that he's down there than to have these, because you have to remember, it took a while for those tapes to finally get there. They didn't send the tapes in October when they told everybody this guy named Lee Oswald said he was, you know, he was talking to the Russians in Mexico. They just kind of kept it under their hat. I mean, if you really look at it, there are no reports about Oswald between the middle of October and the end of October. I mean, they don't even know where he is.
Two things I want to get your thoughts on, Dave. So do you think that one of the reasons that the CIA used Oswald as a patsy is because of the fact that he was so close with the FBI and was an informant, that knowing that they use him in this plot, that anything tying him into this whole conspiracy to kill Kennedy would in fact have people like Hoover have to get involved in the cover-up, because he doesn't want one of his informants tied to the assassination of JFK.
Well, again, I think because the whole charade of Oswald is something that is protecting whatever is happening behind it. I mean, right? I mean, if Oswald didn't do it and is set up as a patsy or whoever that might be, then there's a whole series of activities and situations that are going on behind that is really the assassination, right?
Yeah.
So the only way to make sure you're going to get away with all of these other things happening correctly is to have the patsy, the person who's going to be charged, not only have him be the perfect person to charge as a loner and a communist, but have spent the last 3 or 4 months sheep dipping him to make him look even more guilty.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
So yeah, they're just making it sure that the story holds up enough for a while. Again, reading a little bit about Vincent Salendria during that weekend, he tells us, I mean, poignantly, that this is ridiculous. It's right. Bogus. I mean, and this is that weekend.
Right.
So to feel as if we're getting a whole lot deeper by just still looking at the facade of the cover-up is an interesting way of going. But let's start drilling through that facade a little bit. And again, why was he in Mexico? Why did the CIA? Because something else was going on. They wanted to make sure people were not going to get in the way of whatever they were really doing. And I think there's a lot of those layers in the JFK stuff. right? I mean, you can dig through, and then you have the mafia, and you have this, and even the autopsies, and even the medical evidence. I mean, you have all of these diversions and red herrings and Vincent Salandrialisms that are keeping you from looking at it. Had to be organized, it had to be staffed, it had to be, I mean, now, was the assassination part of the cover-up or separate? I mean, if they were totally separate and they were in and out and killed, all this fun stuff that we're talking about is simply that window dressing that the FBI, CIA, and all of the government pulled together for us to have all this fun with.
Wow.
And as I say in a lot of my stuff, the evidence is the conspiracy. That is what we're being given. If we're never going to be given stuff to figure out the real puzzle, because that's in nobody's best interest. I mean, nobody wants you to figure it out. So, all right, it's kind of like the evidence here with the Secret Service. They found that if he left on this bus at this time, he wouldn't make it in time. Oh, all right, well, then he must have left on a different bus. You can't just change the evidence to fit what you needed to do.
Right, exactly.
And that's why the Mexico thing is so funny, is because that's all they kept doing. Oh, he was here. He was there. Oh, no, he really wasn't. Oh, okay, well, never mind. Then we'll do it over here. And yeah, and it's a wonderful example of this joke of evidence that they try to give us.
Let me ask you about Win Scott. What's your feelings on Win Scott? Do you think he was more just manipulated by David Atlee Phillips in this whole thing, or do you think he played a key role in setting up?
I don't know that he was involved so much in setup. Again, I don't know enough about the real stuff. I know David Atlee Phillips was doing his job, okay? And maybe part of that job was to create certain illusions and certain things about Oswald, especially with Alvarado. That's fine. I think Wynn, admitting in that note to JC that he knew who the mystery man was and he knew what kind of things were going on, knew a lot more. And maybe kind of, again, if he knows this is all the window dressing,
right?
You know, why did Angleton go right after he died and get the stuff out of his safe?
Yeah, right.
You know, you just want to, you got to keep the story is part of what I would love to look. It's history, right? How do we know what part of history is real and what part isn't? And that's what this whole stuff with Mexico is all about. I mean, it's real. Certain things happen. Maybe the guy was there. Maybe a guy was there. I just don't get that impression at all. I really don't. I mean, or someone was pretending to be him. Maybe. I mean, it would be pretty wild for it to him not be there at all.
So you think it's possible though that entire thing was fabricated? That there was nobody there even impersonating him?
The more I get too close to look at it, it's the only thing we have is paper.
Right.
The only thing is people's stories. There's nothing empirical that puts him there other than CIA, Mexican DFS, Cuban intelligence.
So basically what you think, Dave, you think that Mexico City is just a big giant pit, that trap that people fall into that really doesn't have anything to do with figuring out who actually killed Kennedy?
I personally don't. I don't see, I don't see how, I mean, it might have offshoots and connections on the side, but the days there, other than there's just no point to it. There's just no point to it other than implicating Oswald, other than telling the story, scaring the heck out of, I mean, because Johnson is talking to Hoover about that story that next day. He's very concerned about Mexico City, what's going on. And so it really does stop things when you have that connection to Castro, even though it's not true. It changed the course of how you look at it and how they would go about doing it without having to have him in on the plan.
Both of them figure out though that it is, that it is an Oswald in Mexico City, both Johnson and Hoover, because Johnson tells him basically, that the CIA is lying. So do you think at some point, Hoover, because Hoover does have this rivalry with the CIA sort of, and he understands that maybe the CIA is behind this, but he's not going after the CIA. He's not going to piss them off or
there was, there are executive sessions that talk about, that were released, that Alan Dulles specifically said should have been destroyed, that talked about Oswald being an FBI informant, an FBI asset. Right? So all of a sudden now, I mean, nobody is rattling the cages of the CIA and scaring them into anything. All right. So who's the only people that could mess up the CIA stuff really is the FBI. Sure. And the FBI is, I mean, just by the depth of his investigation in October to find out that Oswald wasn't there gives you an idea. I mean, the CIA used to ask for equipment as good as the FBI's down in Mexico. Wow. So just because, I mean, the FBI was everywhere, just like the CIA, just like the military. So, all these intelligence organizations are competing with each other, and some cooperating, some fighting, some not. And spies are on top of spies on top of spies. And Angleton was in the watch the spies business.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Just to close the fact that we could pretty much say that Oswald was not in Mexico City. Hoover actually had all the bus lines leaving Mexico checked and no trace of Oswald whatsoever, correct?
Not only checked, if the FBI interviews with the people down there, the bus records from all the locations were taken that afternoon by Mexican government officials, quote unquote. I mean, any and all of the bus information that could have been available was taken and brought centrally to Mexico City. Mexico City is where our man Ochoa and the Department of the Interior was.
Right.
We have his own people testifying to this man walked in, crossed these things off, wrote these things instead, and that became the evidence.
Okay. And Ochoa supplied the visa, correct? Ochoa was the one?
What's that? Ochoa
supplied the visa?
Ochoa applies everything. He gave us, he gives us the tourist visa, which I believe was a big part of the mistake, where it gives away a lot of the information. The visa itself says on it, Lee, Harvey Oswald. It's signed by Lee H. Oswald. So the man, or whoever, whether it was him or not, signed the man's name, but it was written as Lee, Harvey Oswald. Later in the Mexico saga, he's known as H.O. Lee. Right. That's how it's written. The problem is H.O. Lee is alphabetized in the summary reports as Lee Harvey Oswald. So how would they know H.O. Lee is Lee Harvey Oswald? To alphabetize him in the right spot, first of all. And then second of all, at the hotel, the guest is supposed to sign the registry on the first night.
Right.
On the first night, it's written Lee, Harvey Oswald. It's mind-boggling. Okay. And then the manager says he writes out the rest of it as the man stays. Well, it's the same thing all the way through. The writing is different everywhere else. And it's just so bad. Like, again, Vincent said, the conspiracy was designed to fall apart so that you're left with this feeling of, well, wow, if that's so easy to fall apart and that didn't happen, what really happened? And what really happened, here we are 60 some odd years later, and we don't know what really happened. At least, I don't think we don't. I mean, we're starting to look into this coup in Dallas stuff, and this book is wonderful. It starts to open doors and ideas into things that, if it pans out, would really give us, it's great talking about the charade. It'd be nice to talk a wee bit more about the actual act and what happened.
I do want to mention that to kind of set up for the next episode, but let's close the loop on Mexico City.
Sure.
Is there anything, Bill, is there anything you want to ask about this whole thing with Mexico City? I'm sure you're
just the point that David's been making is that this is really all just to confuse the hell out of the average person, and to have them just say, you know what,
A wilderness of mirrors.
Yeah, who cares?
Exactly.
At this
I mean,
point, who cares?
Well, think about a plan. In any kind of thing this complicated, a plan has to be in place that accounts for a lot of different contingencies. So as you continue to look deeper and deeper to the JFK thing, or those of us who have spent a lifetime doing it, every area has duplicity. Every area is not really what it's supposed to be. I mean, it's like one of those cases where eyewitnesses are actually better than the physical evidence.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Dave, is there anything that you want to just close on Mexico before we move on? Anything that we didn't cover yet that you wanted to add in?
Well, there are rumors that a meeting did occur at a Hotel Luna in Mexico City with an Oswald. It's substantiated by June Cobb and Thomas Davis Eli. But June Cobb is also kind of the backing behind the rave party, and a lot of the lies and a lot of the painting of Oswald is CIA stuff. Right. So the question remains, why go to Mexico when he had everybody that he needed to talk to right there in New Orleans? So and I'd like to to just add a little bit. There's something called the Oswald Project. That
I want to ask you about that, Dave. And I really want to get deep into that maybe next time. But when you talk about the Oswald Project, you're talking about the possibility that there was two persons as Oswald.
Oh no! I'm sorry.
You're not talking.
No. That's a Harvey and Lee thing, which is also very, very worth talking about. No, this is a man named Wilcott who felt that he found that there was a project, or that he was giving money out for a project called the Oswald Project.
Oh, okay.
That coincided with April, him being in New Orleans.
Okay,
and it basically ends with the whole traveling from New Orleans up through to Dallas and the whole Mexico City thing. And that kind of paints him exactly as they had planned to. So whether that's the Oswald Project or not sure. I mean, there's been documentation on it. You never really know. But the main point being that there's this plan. I mean, there's a huge layered plan that people who think that way and understand that way, and you start delving in, it starts to unfold.
Let's take a quick break, Dave, before we move on and get some more sponsors in here.
And we would like to thank our sponsor, Gracious Day Grains. Sean, you like to eat healthy, don't you?
Always, buddy. I try to eat healthy as much as I can.
Yeah, and there is nothing healthier than what they call like farm to table, right? So when you can get something right from the ground and make it and then put it right on your table. And Gracious Day Grains, they have a tremendous selection, and it's totally organic. Everything is, they don't use any sort of herbicides or pesticides or anything like that. They have a bunch of different products on their website, Gracious Day Grains. So if you go to graciousdaymilling.com, you'll find a bunch of great stuff there, Sean.
Yeah, you will, Billy. And it's owned by Tom Maxey, who's a great guy from Virginia. He's a truth seeker, just like me and you, buddy. And Tom's growing philosophy follows the wisdom of farmers of centuries past. And a quote from Tom is, "If we practice the right rotations, we exclude the bugs and weeds without needing herbicides or pesticides." So, I mean, this is great, Billy. I mean, what he's doing is fantastic.
There's cornbread mix, there's cornmeal, popcorn he sells, buckwheat Sean, have you had buckwheat pancakes?
No, buddy.
Oh they're delicious. I love buckwheat pancakes. And Gracious Day Grains sells buckwheat pancakes. Just go to their website and you'll be able to find all of this stuff there. You can order it right off the website. You can find out all about how they farm and their whole philosophy, Tom's philosophy. It's great stuff.
It really is, Billy. And one of the things he does is he grinds small batches at very low temperatures, which retains the flavor and the freshness.
Of course. And it, I mean, it can't get any fresher than that. I mean, it's literally right from the ground. So again, go to graciousdaymilling.com and just, take a look on there. You can order whatever you want and they'll send it right to your door. I mean, again, it doesn't get any fresher than that, right from Tom's farm to your door to your table. So
absolutely. And eat healthy and you'll feel better.
Absolutely. I wish I could do that. I wish I could eat healthier, Sean.
We'll start with Tom's stuff, buddy.
I'm going to order some of those buckwheat pancakes. I love
There you go. I'm going to try them too, Billy.
Yeah, they're really good. All right. Gracious Day. We thank Gracious Day Grains for their sponsorship.
Thank you.
All right. We are back on That's Enough Out of You with our guest, David Josephs. David, thank you so much for joining us today. This is really fascinating stuff. And I think it's really good, for to have somebody like you who can explain, you've done so much research on this. You can really explain in detail what you found over the years. I think it's really helpful for people to kind of get this, from someone like you, from an expert, who can, like I said, just explain it so well. It's for, even someone like me can understand. So
well, and the thing about this too is that to believe Oswald wasn't all these things, it takes thousands and thousands of pages and I mean 15, 16, 1800 documents to know that he did do it. It's easy. Oh yeah, he just did it. I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot. So there's an effort involved in finding the truth beneath all the layers.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of effort.
Yeah, a lot of years. Yeah.
All right, Sean, what do you want to get into?
Well, I want to get in a couple of things to kind of set up for the next time we're going to have David back, because I really want to do a deep dive, Dave, on the conversation that you and I had about 2 months ago, a month and a half. But
yeah.
One of the things I mentioned there was the Harvey and Lee, which, the theory of the researcher John Armstrong, that there was two different people as Oswald. Now, we know Oswald was definitely impersonated multiple times. I mean, that could be proven. But you tend to agree with Armstrong that there was definitely two different people using the name Lee Harvey Oswald. Is that correct?
I believe that. I believe that there is sufficient evidence along the way that the last picture of the natural-born Lee Oswald would be the 1959 passport that we all know of, with the the marine cut, the real short-looking.
Right. Sure.
That after that, all we're really treated to is this very small man. It's kind of hard to argue with the difference in size alone, let alone all of the other evidence that's involved. So that would be great to get into those weeds.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into that next time, but I do also want to get into next time, and I just want to mention it now and set up. But let's talk just a little bit briefly about the notebook and this guy Pierre. And I don't want to destroy the last name. How do you say the last name?
Lafitte.
Lafitte.
Pierre
yes. Lafitte. Would you describe Pierre as, say, a soldier fortune type with very deep intelligence connections? Is that how you would describe him?
Well, they know he worked for the FBI. He worked for the CIA. He's a soldier of fortune, mercenary. He's worked in Europe, and he is the focus of, or his writings is the focus of this book, Coup in Dallas. Right. And his notebook describes in detail the personnel and the setup involved in the Kennedy assassination.
Even named the plot, right? Lancelot, isn't that what they called it?
Yes. Oh, Lancelot.
Yeah.
Yes. In that's correct. In the other note. So the reality of it is any evidence, any historical document has to go through all these rigorous, testings, and my feeling, like so much of the documentation in this is that it's a lot of it is accepted until proven wrong.
Right.
And I think that might be a real smart way for us to go with this, is to take the information that's given in this notebook and run it through the ringer and see how it compares to what we know, for fact or not. Again, we're back to that concept of what the heck is history and how do we know it's real? So yeah, the concept that communism is a force strong enough to be against, that the United States and its allies have lived its life basically fighting communism. And there was some huge crossroads in communism in 1963, as most of you guys know. So taking it out of the realm of petty mafia or Cubans or even disgruntled CIA, it's not so hard to comprehend that the killing of a president and his love or embracing of communists and communism to coexist in the world is not too far-fetched. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, especially after his American University speech and
Big time.
Cuban Missile Crisis and everything. But Dave, the implications of this notebook, if it is genuine, I mean, it is a smoking gun, because a lot of the names that are mentioned in this, of course, are the usual suspects, James Angleton and others, but there's other names that are mentioned. In the conversation that you and I had a couple months ago was talking about it outside of just thinking of this as a pure American operation.
Right.
Forces that were behind this weren't just pure American. I mean, this goes worldwide, and really, you know, some huge names that are in this. But one of the names I want to mention, and I don't know, I heard this name pronounced, and we talked about this on the phone call so many different ways. Swetra.
Yeah, Jean.
Talk about him, the OAS.
Well, the OAS connection is, again, taking this back to why people are so terribly upset, is back to World War II, and how after World War II, the Nazis kind of, and those in France who supported the Nazis, fought the communists.
Sure.
So here we are, when down the road, the concept of cleansing the world of communists and communist infiltration and influence doesn't just end, it continued on. And Sutra was part of a group that, as I see it, as they show in the notebook, and as Hank explains it in the book, that worldwide organizations of assassination and movement about and cover up of that process was a key part of controlling communism, just like I'm sure it's a key part in controlling the United States and its expansion on the other side. So, people are killing people all the damn time.
There's really a lot of evidence against Switzer too. I mean, he possibly, could have been one of the shooters even in Dallas.
That's what it's being suggested there. Again, I reserve myself to conclude pretty much anything until we've wrung it out a little while. But he's been bandied around. I wish I knew a little deeper about him.
He used aliases. I mean, he's really, what was it? Michael Mertz was one of the.
Well, I also know researchers, though, that have been able to show me where these people were in different places during different times that the book talks about. So again, before I'm willing to, to stand behind any kind of statement, I gotta do some more research, got to do some more looking, more talking, and seeing whether it makes sense. Yeah, that's real important today, especially in how easy it is to fake things. There's a lot of information that people have that is not available on the internet, that people went to NARA and took photographs and photocopies and have in their libraries. And so is this kind of original evidence is hard to come by.
Going back to Pierre, though, he was in New Orleans in the 60s, right?
That's what it claims
around
to say.
The same time Oswald?
I don't know about the same. No, I don't know about that. I do know that he was discovered in the research under the killing of Frank Olson, which was the man thrown through the window, and there's a Netflix special on him. Yeah. Sure. There is evidence presented that he was one of the men in the room when that happened. Wow. So, Yeah, that's at least, again, Hank. And Hank Albarelli is his research and his sleuthing is really spectacular. So I'd recommend anyone out there to check out this. It's really deep.
It is deep. I got the book on your recommendation, and I started reading it, but it's really intense.
Yeah. It's like reading Weisberg.
It's a deep read.
It's a very, very deep read. But you can go to the spots that rather than you could use it almost like a textbook because it is so deep. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Well, Dave, this has been awesome. I mean, I really want to get back, and we'll get into that more next time. And of course, next time I'll have the book read, and I'll be able to get into it a little bit more.
Okay.
Is there anything else you want to discuss? Anything, Billy? Anything you want to get into?
I'm looking ahead to present to people again, as I've mentioned to you a couple times in this, is the concept of history and how we tell right from wrong and what is and isn't history and evidence. I would like to say, I guess, that I do have friends on the forum that I work with that are working on blowing out the Zapruder film and how that was actually altered and how it was created. The evidence is never ending when it comes to proving how they pinned it on someone else.
Do you want to get into the Tippett letter, or do you want to keep that for next time?
Next time. We'll do that next time.
That's a fascinating, that's
it is
amazing.
And that takes you to Wisconsin. It takes you to the streets of New York City. It really does go all over. And that's the wonderful thing about this case, is that you can pick a spot, dive in, spend some time, really get to know it. And as you do that a couple of times, you see a real interesting pattern that the layers just keep lining up. They just keep lining up.
One thing I do want to mention, I want to ask you about, because we talked about this previously on the call, and of course we had Joe McBride on, who really did a lot of good work on Tippett. Mm-hmm. And the names I brought up with you was, a major suspect that we had is Captain Westbrook. Mm-hmm. And my conversations with you is you felt that Westbrook was always CIA, because
go
ahead.
Well, he was. He seemed to be CIA before. He seemed to be very, very active that day as the captain of personnel.
Sure. Yes.
The personnel also has access to everyone and their history and their records. So that's the activities he was involved with, the things that he did that day are chronicled. His involvement with the gun and his switching around the pistol, his potentially even being there at the Tippett scene in a car, his driving people around. Yeah. The people who take a little time to look deeper into Westbrook, again, like McBride, it's wonderful to see. And we just added Westbrook in our analysis as to how was Oswald brought to Ruby at the right time.
Yeah,
and we basically concluded that the only person that made sense was Westbrook, who was able to see Ruby coming from where he needed to be coming from at the time he needed to be able to walk back across and tell Fritz to go ahead and bring Oswald down. And literally, like clockwork, within a minute of each other, there he was, and he was shot. And
of course, he would go on to Vietnam and train police over there.
Big time. I mean, I have a wonderful picture of Morales. Yeah. So everything is connected. That's the other part. I mean, you have people. The wonderful guy Tom Purvis helped us understand that it was all about who knew who, the connections, and how they used each other. And it makes a big difference to take the time, like a book like Coup, and look at the people involved, the kernels, they say. All right.
Well, one of the things people say to me, like, how could all these people be involved, and how could they all get involved? They were already together. They were already working together on many operations, all over the place. But one thing I want to ask you about Westbrook, is he mentioned in the notebook? I don't know if I got that far yet.
No.
Not mentioned.
Not that I've the pages in the book itself are a little tough to see, but definitely worth zooming in.
One of the things we talked about too on the call is how you mentioned how you have to, when you're deciphering the JFK assassination, you have to look at the sponsors, facilitators, and mechanics of the operation.
That's actually Michael. Yeah,
right.
That was Michael Ivica and Charles Drago years ago, and by looking at it and understanding that there are people on the ground doing the things, the mechanics, that there are facilitators that are in between, like the David Atlee Phillips, like the Hunts, like the police chiefs. I mean, again, I think it's important that you separate the assassination from the cover-up.
Right, absolutely.
So as you look at the cover-up, which are really kind of, there are things that happened prior to the 22nd, but so much of the cover-up is created after the 22nd.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Sure.
So you have all of that, and then you have the assassination itself, and what we're seeing with coup in Dallas, and the potential of a real professional hit, like it's supposed to be. Like, no, there's not. They wouldn't be seen behind the fence. They wouldn't be seen. It's a real hit.
Yeah. Okay.
And obviously the military is in on it because Bethesda is everything.
You know, the military's controlling the autopsy.
Everything. And LeMay, Curtis. If you do a little bit of looking again, it's all that backstory. They were very, very much against Kennedy and what he was saying and doing. Yeah. So it all lined up. And Mexico, I'm sorry, Bill, that Mexico has to be such a disappointment in terms of its involvement with the assassination and stuff. I would suggest get in touch with Bill Simpich, man, and read the State Secret and check how deep the Mexico story can be, for sure, because a lot was going on in Mexico at that time.
It was a hotbed of intelligence activity.
It's unbelievable. So it's not that it was nothing. It just really had nothing to do with other than what we talked about in terms of keeping the FBI at bay.
The one thing is, there's so many operations that are going on. Like, you could get into this and you could tag on to something, and you're actually onto another operation that's separate from the Kennedy assassination. You get into
exactly
on a rabbit hole and you get stuck there.
Exactly. People did, again, you're talking context and trying to think in 1963 mind, where you have 5, 6, 7, 8 different intelligence agencies all running things and doing stuff. And then all the other countries that are there. I mean, Czechoslovakia and Poland and Chinese communism. I mean, there was so much going on in Mexico City that there's great books. Again, John Newman's books and Simpich's book. It's wonderful, wonderful stuff.
Absolutely. Billy, anything you want to ask Dave?
Just one last thing, and it's so important. Like you said, put yourself in 1963. I mean, the average person didn't have access to any of this information. The only information you really got was what was on your news,
right.
11 o'clock news, what was in the newspaper. That was it. There was no internet. There was no really networking of people that had any idea of what was going on. It was just what you were fed by the government, but what they wanted you to know, exactly what they wanted you to know. And that was it. And and
you believed it. I mean, and it wasn't question. You didn't question the cop on the beat.
Of course not.
You didn't question the FBI. I mean, these
there
were
was
the
no reason
G-men,
to at that point. Right. There was no reason to.
There was no reason to, which is why it's, again, looking back, it's hard to imagine people of intelligence saying, oh, God, it had to have been Oswald. I mean, you just didn't question these things. So, and as I meant, you have to look at a million freaking pages of documents to find that, wow, Oswald really didn't do it. No.
Right. As they say, perception is reality, and that's what it was, right?
Yeah. I wonder years from now when they look back at this time and they wonder what was real.
Right.
How do we talk about history of this time?
Well, I mean, Sean has said many times on this show that he thinks Trump is an intelligence asset. The whole. So, who knows? You never know.
What is Dylan's song? You got to serve somebody.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
If I do want to throw one last name to set up for next time, because it's a name. Because like you said, with that the book Coup in Dallas, it's like a textbook. So I was going through it and searching around different parts of it, and one of the names that fascinated me, and it's a name that's mentioned a lot in McBride's book, And I didn't get a chance the last time McBride was on to talk to him about this person, but it's Jack Crichton. And Jack Crichton is a fascinating character.
Fascinating character. Yeah,
military intelligence, the oil to Marina Oswald. I mean, and he's there. He's in the motorcade the day of the assassination. I mean,
he's also big UFO stuff. Grisman. Yeah, I mean, he's done a variety of different things. Whether the 488th military existed or not, whether these different, he was basically, there was a bunker underneath the one of the buildings in Dallas, where they were able to monitor all of the communication. And Crichton and some of the other, again, we're back to colonels again, Brandsetter and Whitmire. These names, very interesting names that pop up that are all colonel level and lieutenant colonel level names that do all the hard work, and they're all intelligence based. So again, you can't really encapsulate everything other than Crichton was or Grisman. There's Crichton and Grisman. There's two of them, I guess. Crichton seemed to be just part of that machine that put the information out to add to Oswald's.
Sure, he got a translator for Marina Oswald.
Exactly. Peter,
right in the middle of everything.
So,
and we also mentioned, Dave, we talked about on the phone call, I keep going back to that call because it was great, but we're talking about the military and intelligence, how it's kind of like they're one and the same almost. And it's like when you talk about like General Ed Lansdale, is Lansdale military or is he CIA? He's Dulles' guy. Does it really matter if he's military or if he's CIA?
What I kind of see as I keep looking, and Lucien Conan was another one. I saw his document, and it was like they're on loan from the military. They maintain rank, they maintain order, but they're on loan to the CIA. The CIA gets most of everything it got from and through the military. Prouty, who facilitated a lot of the CIA, was military. Most everyone in the CIA had been military or OSS or somehow involved in World War II. Yeah. So to think that the CIA was not the military. I mean, I know John Newman's doing it. We talked Vesiana and Bishop. And the fact that, we thought for a long time he was on one side of the coin. And is it really a different side of the coin to be in the military versus being in the CIA? I don't know. I don't see that, although there's military intelligence and Office of Naval Intelligence. And we don't talk much about them at all. Right?
So we never do. We never do.
So and those are the two oldest intelligence agencies there are. So if we're always blaming the CIA, whatever the ONI is doing is, who knows?
We talked about this with Professor Paul Blow when we had him on too. Like Dulles at the time isn't CIA anymore because Kennedy got rid of him. So he's outside the agency. So he's kind of the invisible government, if you want to talk about
as lawyer for United, ex-lawyer for United Fruit. Talk about connected. I mean, the man's connected up.
He's in the middle of everything.
And I still see him as facilitator level. I don't see him sponsor level.
Right.
I mean,
sure.
To me,
the sponsor. I see him though, like the main facilitator, one of the main facilitators. But when you're talking sponsor, you could be talking Rockefellers.
Rockefeller, Harriman.
Maybe how about Rothschild?
Well, Rockefeller Morgan was basically Rothschild in the United States. So, and I found it interesting in terms of a crossover between sponsor and facilitator was Bundy. Okay, if you look at Bundy,
fascinating,
and you see how because he was both in, at least that's how I saw it. And him doing. We
talked with Greg Burnham about Bundy, where he felt he's right in the middle, like he's definitely. Where other people are on the fence, some people say that he wasn't involved.
I
know Scalandria thought that he was very suspicious and said that he was involved.
I just saw Bundy though as the consummate survivor. I mean, as you say, he was not even really elected, right? He was chief of staff, and he redefined chief of staff. So here's a man completely not elected at all redefining how information is passed through to the president.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting story about Mr. Bundy.
And he has a connection to Allen Dulles too, going back to his brother who was in the CIA, who his brother was attacked by McCarthy, and Dulles and Angleton kind of come in and save him.
And again, connections. It's all about the connections. Right. So here you are at the time, and he's holding a copy of a changed national security memorandum that completely reverses
Vietnam.
Absolutely. What a surprise.
What a surprise. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Always a great time talking with you there, Sean.
Yeah, well, we set up perfect for the next time, Dave. We're definitely going to come back, and we got to get into this notebook.
Oh, yeah. No, I got to. Yeah, see now, we got to stop when you stop recording. You got to stop recording.
Okay.
First.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, David. And just want to, direct everybody to your articles on Kennedys and King. That's Jim DiGenio's website. So, make sure you check out David's work on there. It's fantastic. Lots of articles going back a number of years. So,
and Dave, anything else you want to plug? Go ahead.
Well, this particular, if you want to get deep into all the slides from this particular Mexico presentation on YouTube, you could probably Google what is it, SF 2018. Mexico, and that'll probably come up from there.
You could just go. I think it's on the Black Op Radio site. You could just get on
Black Ops, exactly. That was a great time.
Yeah,
a great time. Got a chance to meet Peter Dale Scott there, which was very, very. Yeah, it was a dream there, and he actually pulled me aside. It was nice. He pulled me aside and said, "You know what you're doing about Mexico." So it felt like I was going in the right direction.
You happen to discuss with him, I don't know if you want to answer this, but did you discuss with him the story that night he was at the Hoover Institute, the dinner party, and they were talking about? Did you talk about that or no?
No, we didn't. No, we didn't talk that. No. Okay. I was lucky enough to have him sit there and listen to my presentation, and then tell me afterward it was right on, and I knew what I was talking about. So it was great. Yeah, it was really great.
Yeah. All right, David, thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us and look forward to you coming back.
Oh, thanks. Anytime.
All right.
Thank you, David.
That's enough out of you.
That's Enough Out of You podcast is executive produced and written by Bill Rader and Sean Kane and edited by Bill Rader. The That's Enough Out of You podcast and logo are exclusive property of Bags of Chicken, LLC. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or accounts of this podcast without the express written consent of Bags of Chicken, LLC is prohibited. So don't even try it.